Welcome to the Heart of Dad podcast. Heart of Dad is a podcast for entrepreneurs who are passionate about their families and business and looking to find more clarity, more balance and more alignment in all areas of their life. Come and join the community at heartofdad.com or on Facebook at groups/Heart of Dad. This week on Heart of Dad, I'm talking to Ray Richards. Ray is a social entrepreneur and a founder of tech wellbeing company Do Something Different, the Life Done Differently podcast, and Port Moor Cottage, a men's wellbeing retreat that floods. His work seeks to understand how we can all find balance in our lives through the lens of the unknown and the known, how we can all benefit from taking small, slightly uncomfortable steps into the unknown and turning that experience into the known. His work explains how that process of expanding our comfort zone is crucial for all our well-being. So this week on Heart of Dad, I'm delighted to welcome Ray Richards to the podcast. Hi, Ray.
Hiya.
I interrupted you. Take a gulp of water if you need it.
It's down.
Okay.
It's trying to prevent me from coughing.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Ray.
I am husband, father of three. They're 22, 20 and 17. Currently got my nephew living with me, 18. He's here for a year, so that's brought some interesting challenges. When it's not your own child. I run a business called Do Something Different. I have a podcast called Life Done Differently, which I co-host with Neil Whitten, and I spend Fridays, if I can, renovating a cottage in a lake. Sorry, not in a lake, on a river. It feels like it's in the middle of a lake, on a river in Essex, which stands on stilts and floods occasionally. So, that's how I sort of spend my time.
Fantastic. And I know, because I've known you for some time now, that's not all the story, of course. You've had a career as an entrepreneur and a very successful one as well. And Do Something Different is kind of the latest project of several that you've had in your working life. Yeah.
It's been lots of change. And that's been an interesting process. But I've probably done this. I realise now I've been do something different longer than I've ever done anything else. So that's new.
Okay. So how's that felt like for you? Because I know that many of the people I speak with them count myself a bit like this as well. I get a bit restless when I sort of stay in one place, metaphorically, not literally. But how's it been for you to really kind of invest yourself into that project in such a long time?
Well, I think it's probably the first time I've ever felt like it's what I was meant to do. So it feels different. It feels like the most important thing I've done. Certainly from a work perspective. So it's felt like I haven't had much of a choice in a way, because it feels like something important. It feels like I have the opportunity to create a business in the way that I want to create a business that makes the world a better place. And it's much more reflective of me as a person than anything else I've done before. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. I think it's a fascinating answer. It's one that's very kind of close to my heart, that idea of being aligned with something that's important to you or purposeful, because in a sense, this is what Heart of Dad is for me. It's, at the moment, it's not a commercial venture. I don't have any need or intention for it to be, but it's a sense of alignment with what I really want and the impact I want to have in the world. It feels very aligned with me. So I'm really interested to hear you talk about that. You haven't used the word alignment, but that's kind of what the sense I'm getting from what you're saying in that.
Yeah, I mean, I do talk about coherence quite a lot in terms of the product that we've developed, and it's coherence can mean many different things, but it is, I think it's exactly the same as alignment. It's where work and play become indistinguishable, really. It's where what I think, what I say, and what I do hopefully come together. But like Heart of Dad, it's not a commercial venture in the sense that other ventures I've been involved with are, and other ventures you've been involved in are. That's not the reason we're doing it, and that's part of the reason we've struggled over the last few years, because if I'm honest, I've been paying much more attention to the benefit we are bringing to people rather than the commercial side of things. And that's, if you don't take notice of money, it can cause problems, and it has. So I'm having to spend a little bit more time taking care of the financial side of things. But I think once that's got to the point where we've got enough oxygen, enough money to keep going, that's all I need, really. I just need the right amount. And so coherence, alignment, whatever you want to call it, is, I think, for me, it's the goal.
So the goal is to be in a coherent project for yourself.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it's got to be enjoyable. It hasn't always been, because it's tough. It's challenging, and I think the best things around are challenging. Parenthood is not always easy, and that's why it's so great. and I think that's the same with work sometimes. If it was easy, I don't think you'd get what you're looking for from it. But I don't want those ups and downs to be too great. I don't want to be in a rut or in chaos, but I'm happy to sort of go somewhere, end up in areas which are somewhere in between those two things, and not flatlining where I'm not conscious.
Beautifully described, really. So it's kind of like that definition. There's good stress and there's bad stress. There's the kind of, you want to feel a little bit of stretch, don't you, without being kind of spun out of control. That's kind of where things start to get a bit ragged.
Yeah, the way I think about it is, it's what I think we're all looking for, to have a foot known, and that's where we sort of find meaning, purpose. That's where our well-being's good. That's where we sort of achieve our potential. That's how we grow. And you've got to accept that does require having a good solid foot in the known, which is stable, which allows you to take those steps into the unknown, which you have to get your head around, and then you turn that into the known, and the process continues. And that's how you grow. And you've got to recognize you'll never get there.
Yeah, brilliant. Which makes it an adventure.
That's right, exactly right. And in fact, in our podcast, we've interviewed quite a few adventurers, and it's just fascinating to hear their stories of the hangovers, as I call them, that follow their. Well, we interviewed Dave Cornthwaite, who skateboarded across Australia, broke the world record there, and we've interviewed other people that have broken world records, and it's been they've achieved such, they've had such massive experiences on those adventures, but they have this period that follows, which has been, certainly in the early stages, depressing. And they've found ways to cope with that. But they're going to come. Like you, I've sold a business, and, you have that high, and then the bit afterwards, it's a bit discombobulating, to say the least.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you about that. How it impacted you. Did you what was your experience of the hangover?
Well, there was, it certainly was a hangover. You don't necessarily understand your place in the world anymore. You've got all this freedom or perceived freedom that you didn't have before. You've got time on your hands, and you can, within reason, you can do a lot of the things that you want. But then you suddenly realise that actually a lot of the buzz from life came from being in that business and the challenge that you had, and you've got to sort of try and work out what the new world looks like.
Yeah, very much.
Some of the relationships you had before. It's a really, really interesting process to go through. And I think those people a lot of people look at people who sell their businesses and think, wow, everything's fantastic for them now. They've got a bit of money. And I'm not knocking it. I'm glad I did it. But it isn't the story that people think it is necessarily.
Yeah, that really resonates with me as well. I think I'm grateful and glad for what my business allowed me to do when I sold it. But it's not a magic wand, and I think there's no. I'm going to say that really obviously there's no straight line correlation between money and happiness, of course.
No, absolutely right, and that it really is true.
Yeah. So, sort of winding back to that time in your life, Ray, like how old were your kids when you exited that business?
Well, it was 10 years ago. So my oldest was 12.
Right.
And I think the timing was pretty good, because those teenage years are years when it's good for a dad to be around. I think any time is a good time for a dad to be around, but I wouldn't have wanted to do it. I'm glad I didn't leave it much later. Put it that way. I wouldn't have necessarily. I was working hard and I wasn't around as much as I maybe would have liked. And yeah, I'm glad it happened at that point.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, what did you notice shift for you in your role as father when you did have that exit from the business and found yourself with more time to connect with your family?
What did I notice? It's hard to remember exactly what changed, but I certainly know I was able to do things like manage my son's football team, and that was quite a good thing. I was much more able to turn up to those events at school. And I think probably what you do is you get, with spending more time, you get more of an insight into what's going on in their lives. You maybe see their friends more, so you understand what their friends are like. I think it's probably quite easy for people to imagine what more time with family means, because when you go on holiday, you spend more time with your family, and it's sort of a bit more of that sort of time, just hanging out rather than making time.
Right. Was that cool for you? Because it's been interesting having these conversations with entrepreneur dads. We've got into very honest conversations about how if you've got that kind of driven mindset or gene, or you're very you still got a massive amount of skin in the game in your business, that stopping for holidays is quite hard. And even harder can be switching off from business while on holiday and really reconnecting with your family. It can, for me, certainly in this was before I had a child even, but I found it incredibly difficult to let go to even take holiday at the beginning, until I got so exhausted and almost burnt out that, my body said, well, actually, you really do need to take time out of this. But I found it hard to switch into holidays. It took me a long time.
Yeah, in fact, as soon as I left, I did take a week long holiday, and I pretty much did nothing. I was, I don't know even if I left the hotel complex, I was knackered. And I think that was a bit like, I think I spent a week decompressing. I'm not sure how available to my family I was in that week, if I'm honest, because I was just, I think I was recovering. It was the start of recovering. But yeah, I think gradually you start to engage more as a dad.
Yeah.
Rather than sort of trying to juggle the dad, being director of a business, where you feel as though if you're not around, everything is going to crumble down. Of course, it doesn't. People are amazing. You've hired good people; they can cope without you. But it doesn't always feel like that.
Doesn't always feel like that. So in the earlier years, then were you able to? Did you travel without a laptop, for example? Were you able to switch your phone off and not get involved when you were?
Yeah, I was pretty good at that, I think, but that doesn't mean your mind isn't whirring. Even with your phone turned off and your laptop packed away, or not even taken with you, your head is spinning still, and little things happen that trigger thought processes that you can't stop, and that takes a long time. And if I'm honest, I don't think that's, to a certain extent, that's ever stopped for me. I think certainly now, I think what I do is important. So I am constantly thinking about it, but I'm lucky now in that a lot of the conversation, I can have conversations with my kids about it.
I was wondering about that. I was going to ask you how much were you open with your kids about how deeply involved you were in kind of your business and the impact that might have had on you as a dad? Did that ever get kind of aired at all?
Yeah, I think it did. I mean, I don't think I will. I think I certainly shielded them from a lot of the stress I was feeling. Well, I thought I was shielding them from it. There's no doubt I wasn't. But I was doing my best to shield them from it. But when it came to it, they came in and they even when they were 12 and they would have been 12 and 10 at the time, I had them in the office over that last weekend before the due diligence papers were due in, and they were photocopying stuff for me and sorting stuff out. So yeah, at 12 and 10, Alfie and Joe helped me through the due diligence process, which was quite interesting.
Did they have a sense of what was happening? It's also a big deal for you.
I don't think so. No, I mean, I think they probably understand more now, if they can remember that period. No, I don't think they really understood.
And are they curious now about that story? Because obviously they see you now as dad with this new venture that's very close to your heart. But it sounds from what you're saying that there was a kind of a before and after version of Ray, kind of before when you were still in that business that was consuming a lot of your time and energy to the point where it got sold. And then there was you afterwards, the person who collapsed pretty much on holiday that first week and started a period of recovery and hangover that we were talking about.
Yeah, I think they probably have forgotten the old one. I think they know the new one, and we can have interesting conversations about this venture, because what we do is useful to them. So yeah, I think they're much more interested in what I do now than even if I'd have carried on doing what I was doing, which, you know, at the time we sold was search engine marketing. It's, you know, it's not, okay, for some people it might be interesting, and, you know, it's one of those things that businesses need to know about and need to do, but in itself it's not particularly interesting. But what I do now, which is all about helping people to take small steps out of their comfort zone, well, it applies to everybody. So it's a much more interesting conversation I can have with them and their friends. And it's interesting, actually, because the oldest two are both at university, and, you know, they're interested in this stuff. They listen to podcasts themselves. They're looking to grow and develop themselves. So I can have some really interesting conversations with them, and they help me.
I think that's sort of really interesting, and it's come up in different conversations with Dad. And I'm just wondering about how, you know, there's that kind of implicit as well as explicit impact on your kids when they see you aligned with something that you're passionate about. You know, so there was a financial benefit for your first kind of, you know, your first big exit, which obviously must have had a positive impact on your family. But in terms of your emotional well-being and your emotional presence as a dad, I'm guessing that this current project that you've put all these years into has had a different kind of ripple effect into the family.
I think it has, but I think I'd like to think, you'll have to ask them whether it's true or not. I'd like to think I'm sort of setting an example in a way. I'm trying to do something that I feel passionate about. And I think it's probably something we all should try and do if we can. If we find something we're passionate about and that we enjoy and that can help us and help the people around us, and we can make a living from it, then I think that's a good thing to do. I mean, I've just seen too many people, as you have, I'm sure, and as I've been in the past, going in and doing the job because they need to earn some money to pay the mortgage. And life is what happens when you're coming back through the front door, and that's not good enough. You know, we spend at work. We spend too long at work for it not to be important, enjoyable, and purposeful.
I think that's such a powerful message you're sharing there, and I think it's one that, you know, some people, well, many people will resonate with, but there will also be some people who struggle with that idea of purpose and alignment. That maybe because they haven't found it, or it seems a luxury. And I'm wondering about your own kind of journey into kind of the emergence of do something different. How did that idea come to you? How did you know that it was the right thing for you?
Well, it didn't come to me. I met a man. I'd taken some time out. I'd done the usual entrepreneurial thing and bought a house and renovated it over the period of 2 years, spent far too much money doing it up. And I got a call from somebody that I'd worked with previously, and she was at one of the big consulting firms, and she invited me in to do some work with her. And I was twiddling my thumbs a little bit and thought, well, why not? Why not? So I did that, and then got invited in to work on a diversity project, which I bid for and won, and then sort of realized that I didn't really just want to do a bit of e-learning, which people tick the boxes while they were watching EastEnders, to say that they've become more diverse because they've been through an e-learning program. No offense to all those people in e-learning land. But I wanted to actually understand how you could change people's behaviour. And so I got introduced to Professor Ben Fletcher and Professor Karen Pine, and they'd done the research. They developed the methodology, which is the Do Something Different methodology, which is all about behavioural flexibility, the science of behavioural flexibility, and getting people to take small steps out of their comfort zone, and by doing so, increasing their well-being and achieving what they want to achieve. And I looked at it, and they were doing it in community centres in Norfolk, and I'm looking at it thinking, wow, this is quite something. I can see how this works. It should be online. This could be something that scales. And that is, as soon as I saw it, as soon as I spoke to Ben and Karen, I understood what it could be. So it was just one of those moments where you stumble across something and you think, I've got to grab this. I've got to, this is something interesting. And yeah, I couldn't let it go.
That's so powerful, isn't it? When you have that feeling of, you can't let it go. It's
it's painful as well, though, not being able to let things go sometimes.
That's true.
True. And you've got to understand whether you should be letting it go when it gets really painful. Should I let this go, or should I, or do I need to be resilient here? And it's hard to know sometimes.
Or what you were saying at the beginning before we came on onto the recording, which is, or reconfigure, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't have to be a binary. It's like, it's not it doesn't have to be on or off. It can be just different.
Well, no, absolutely. And that's, and that's what I think we've been quite good at doing all the way along is doing our best to practice what we preach. And if we're not getting the results that we want, we have to do something different. And sometimes when you delay decisions, the steps you need to take are bigger. And that's what we did. I delayed decisions, which I should have made earlier, and that made the steps I needed to take bigger. But it was okay. In the end, we made those changes. It's a hard thing to do sometimes, to practice what you preach.
Yeah, for sure. I can see that in all areas of life. And just coming back into sort of fatherhood a little bit, Ray, I sort of want to link some of the things you've been talking about up together. And what have you seen kind of change in your approach to being a dad as life has kind of unfolded? Because you've been through different stages, you've had different kind of careers now. What's emerged for you?
I can't necessarily pinpoint the changes that have happened as a result of me changing what I do work-wise, but I certainly know that as kids grow up, I feel that the conversations have changed, and I've felt that it's quite important to treat my children as adults sooner rather than later. So letting them make decisions rather than making decisions for them. And that could be as simple as, I don't know, your new phone hasn't arrived. Well, I'm not going to sort it out for you. You get on the phone, you get on the email, you find out what's happened to it. Because if I do that for you, you won't know how to do it next time. So, and I think that's resulted. I mean, both of my boys, who are 22 and 20, they both went off traveling before they went to university, and I didn't get involved. I just didn't get involved. I had conversations with them about certain things, but they booked everything. They decided where they were going. They decided what was dangerous and what wasn't dangerous. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things to do as a parent, is to let them grow up and let them be independent. And I think it's probably one of the most important things that you can do is to let them fail.
It's such a brilliant message to be sharing. I think other parents would resonate with that. I mean, obviously my son's at a much earlier stage in his life than your sons are, but what you're saying kind of really hits home with me, that sense of, making the switch from that stage of supporting and creating an environment where they can succeed to really fostering that step into independence.
Yeah, and I think you can do it very young. It's if they want to. Well, in fact, I've just been away with some friends, and amongst that was some people I didn't know so well. And one of them brought his 2-year-old son, and he was letting his 2-year-old son go down the stairs, and they were quite steep stairs, and we were all looking at it. He was the only kid with us, and we were all looking at it thinking, oh my God, he's going to fall, and he didn't. His dad Tom let him go down those stairs, and actually there was a few wobbles, but he was fine. He was absolutely fine. And so I think it can start at a really early age. You let them fall. All you've got to do is make sure that the consequences of them falling aren't too great, because when they're younger, they can be, roads are dangerous places.
Yeah.
You can't let them fail there.
Yeah.
But you can let them get a bloody nose.
Brilliant. I love that. Just sort of switching focus a little bit in terms of fatherhood. One of the conversations I've been having with dads on this podcast are two themes really I've been exploring. One is guilt and the other one is anger. And I think you've touched a little bit on the guilt side, but I'd love to hear a bit more about that if you're open to sharing, Ray, about how, particularly kind of in those earlier years when you were very kind of in up to your neck in your business, what did you have a relationship with guilt about, balancing things between what you're doing in your business and your home life?
I'm not sure if it ever got into. I don't think there was lots of guilt, but I think the reason for that was partly as I knew why I was doing it. I knew I was pushing hard because I knew or felt confident that there was going to be an end point. And the decision that we made as a business was, and certainly as the major shareholders, was to not push it too far, so too greedy. We could have kept going for a few more years and made more money, but we didn't want to get too greedy. And so I think I knew why I was doing it. I knew there was I felt there was going to be this end point that we could orchestrate, and we did. So I think if you know why you're doing it, it makes life a lot easier. The question is whether you're doing it for the right reasons or not.
Yeah. Yeah. But it sounds like you had reconciled that in your own mind. You knew there was an end point. You knew you weren't going to push beyond what seemed reasonable to you. You weren't being greedy. It was about there was a finishing line in your mind.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, sometimes you maybe reconstruct these stories in your mind and you justify what you were doing, but I'm pretty sure that's what was going on in my mind. I don't think, if I'm honest, I could have kept on going forever, not at the pace I was going anyway. I knew there had to be an end point, or we knew. It wasn't just me. I think we were all pushing hard. So yeah, I think that why is important.
I mean, if it's not too personal a question, like to what extent was your wife and were your kids brought into that? Were you quite transparent with what you were doing? And
certainly my wife. Yeah, she was very supportive. We had conversations at various stages about the financial risks that I was taking, the gamble. And I think she probably understood that it would be a regret of mine if I didn't do it. So she was very encouraging, although she doesn't like the confrontation. So maybe it was that. But she also, she was very. She always wanted to be a mum. The fact that I was working hard meant that she was able to take some time off of full-time work. So it was a balance, and I think that was also a motivation for me. That's what she wanted, and so that made it easier for me to do what I was doing because she was getting what she wanted. So that sort of, I guess I'd never thought about it like this before, but I think there was less guilt because, she was getting what she wanted.
Yeah, so there was a win-win, even though there was some personal sacrifice, I imagine, for both of you in that period.
Yeah, I wouldn't. As I said before, I really wouldn't want to carry on doing running things at the pace I was running, but I did understand why I was doing it, both in terms of looking forward and what the end result could be, and also that she was getting what she wanted at that moment. Albeit she probably would have liked me to have been around a bit more. So I think we both understood why, and that's a massive help. I think if you haven't got that support from the closest people around you, it must be very difficult. Well, almost impossible, I think. I think it would just be too much.
The pressure would be extraordinary, wouldn't it? Because you've got pressure at work, and then when you come home, you've got pressure. Yeah,
and that's not right. That's not something really does need to change then.
Yeah. I think that's worth a sort of a show in itself. I think that to explore with people who've had that experience, because although I was also very supported in my journey, there were times when the intensity was so great that it had a big impact on my relationship at the time, and the strain was enormous, I think, for both parties. I don't think, as you say, it's actually possible to go through that kind of building a very successful business at pace, and to do it without support from those who are close to you.
Yeah, but I think the trick is to really understand. Some people don't that whatever you want to call it, uncomfortableness, stress, pain. People use different words, and they may be talking about exactly the same thing. I think it is a difficult thing to understand whether you just need to dig deep and get through it, or whether you need to cut your losses. And I don't have an answer for that.
No, I don't think you can. I think you only know in the moment, and even then, do you really know? It's a bit like we were talking about the kind of when you pivot your business. The data's there, isn't it, when you pivot a business? But in a relationship, it's much harder. Or maybe the data's right, too, I don't know.
In a few years' time, we'll have data in our relationships. We have to look at it on our phone.
Yes, gosh, yeah. I'm chilled with the thought of it. So the other sort of direction I wanted to go in is towards anger, and one of the things I've been exploring with other dads and talking about for you myself is that there have been times when I've been at a real edge, either through the pressure of the work or kind of the pressure I put on myself, and some of that anger has spilt out into my role as a dad or as a partner, and not being the greatest moments really. But I wondered, what your experience of that was. Had you had times where things had kind of boiled over into home life?
Well, I don't think if they don't boil over into home life, I don't think you're human.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a continuum.
Sure.
And sometimes it's understandable and sometimes it's unacceptable. And I think all we can try and do, all of us, is try and work at making sure that the unacceptable anger doesn't surface very often. And if it does, take a step outside, go for a run, go for a walk. I think let off steam somehow. And I think we all, I can only really talk as a dad. I can't talk as a mum, but I think all of us, it affects us in a similar way, maybe. I think we've got to put ourselves first. When you're on that aeroplane, they say put the oxygen mask on yourself first, because if you aren't there, you can't help your child. So I think it's, again, one of the tricks is to understand when it's time to start looking after yourself. And if you're in a good place, you're going to be much more help to your kids. And if you're not, if you're sacrificing all the time, then you're making a mistake. So, it usually comes back to, for me, it comes back to this idea of balance. You've got to have compassion for yourself. You've got to have compassion for other people. The more compassion you have for other people, the more compassion you can have for yourself. The more compassion you have for yourself, the more compassion you can have for other people. And you can't overdo it on either of those things. You have to do both.
I love that.
And it's okay.
Yeah.
It really is okay to look after yourself.
I think that would be one of the key takeaways from this podcast. I think what you just said, really, really powerful stuff around compassion for yourself and compassion for others, and neither can be overdone.
Yeah, so if you want to go to the pub tonight, off you go. Just don't do it every night.
Yeah. Is there anything, in hindsight that you would change now that you've done? Is there anything in hindsight you'd change?
No, it's difficult, isn't it? Because if you're okay where you are, if you're, then you can't really look back and change things because you wouldn't be where you are. But I think I certainly, like all of us, probably, I think I wish I'd learned a few lessons a long time ago rather than a short time ago. And I wish I hadn't felt so much like an imposter. I think I wish I'd had the confidence I have in my own judgment now. I wish I'd had it then, as much as anything, because I would have made it easier for myself and probably made it, almost certainly made it easier for the people around me as well. So yeah, I think I probably wish I'd trusted myself a bit more, and rather than doing things the way other people do them the way I thought was the right way to do it. And I think when I've had successes, that's been because I've had faith in myself. And when I've not been successful, it's because I haven't had faith in myself. And so really listening to myself, really understanding how I feel, and that feeling that way, if it's a negative feeling, isn't a good feeling, and something needs to change. That feeling of incoherence, that feeling that you're doing it the way that Fred Bloggs tells you should be doing it. You know it's wrong, but you go along with it because you think Fred knows more than you. Well, Fred probably doesn't.
Well, Fred only knows the Fred way, right? Doesn't know the Ray way or the Matt way.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, easily said, and I'm sure we all feel it. I wish I'd felt more confident in myself when I was younger, and it would have certainly made life easier for me.
Do you see that in all areas of your life, not just business? Do you mean also as a dad as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And but having said that, I think I probably had more confidence in myself as a dad than I did in myself in business. I think I've probably been truer to myself as a father than I have in business.
What do you make of that? Is that from your own upbringing? Did you have a good relationship with your own dad, or is it a decision to be different from your dad? How did that come about?
Yeah, it's a great question. My dad died about a year ago, and he was ill before he died, and I've thought about him a lot since. And I did have a good dad, but like all dads, he made mistakes. There were things he didn't understand. There were things he thought were really important that weren't as important as he thought they were. So what was your question? I've forgotten your question.
Well, you were saying that you had more faith in your abilities as a dad than you did in business. So I was asking you, where do you think that came from? Was it a conscious decision, or was it just you had a wonderful blueprint in your own dad?
I had a very good blueprint in my own dad in certain areas, and the areas where he wasn't so good, I understood, and I think I probably understood them fairly early on. He wasn't somebody to share his emotions, like many people of his generation. My dad was born in 1936, so he wasn't very good at sharing how he felt. He wasn't very good at asking for help. I'm not good at that, but I'm better than he was at that. And there were many things he was better than me at, but I wasn't very good at asking for help. And he got independence and asking for help mixed up, I think, sometimes. He was very strongly independent, and that meant he didn't ask for help when it would have made life easier for him, and it would have made life easier for me and my brother. And because he didn't ask for help, he fell, metaphorically and physically, and that meant, it was a lot more, it was more difficult for him and us. And if he'd asked for help earlier, it wouldn't have got to that stage. So, yeah, I think I probably learned a lot of lessons about being a father earlier on. I mean, my business education didn't start until I was, still I started working. So I was playing catch up, I think. But I had experience of having a father and being a father earlier, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. I love that. It's been such a rich conversation, Ray. I really, really appreciated it. I love hearing, in the latter part, what you were saying about your dad and your relationship with him. Just a final question, really. How would you like to see your children go into business in the way that you have, into entrepreneurship?
It's totally down to them. Totally down to them. I mean, I really, really, absolutely would. My dad made me do maths A level, and I did it, and I failed miserably. I don't want to make that mistake again. They're different to me. I think it can be a very rewarding path. It can be a very stressful path. The worst bits I wouldn't wish on anyone. The best bits I wish everybody could experience. So yeah, I'm if that's what they want to do, then great. If they don't, also great. I think they've got to find their own path. They've got to be coherent. They've got to try and find what they enjoy, do it their way, have their own mind, be in charge of themselves. So yeah, great. If that's what we want to do it.
Beautiful message, and I guess very aligned with your purpose now, isn't it? About being coherent.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been such a great conversation. Thanks very much for taking part, Ray.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
Where can people find out more about you if they want to go and look you up?
We can check out the Life Done Differently podcast. That's lifedonedifferent.ly, or search my name, Ray Richards, or Neil Whitten, who's my co-host, or come to dsd.me, and there's a little button on there where you can sign up for early access to the new app. We'd love to welcome you into the Do Something Different fold.
Fantastic. I'll make sure those links are in the show notes.
That's great.
All right. Thanks again, Ray.
All right. Thanks for your time. See you. Bye.